Nigel Farage pointed out the odd reaction he received from Jean-Claude Juncker, Michel Barnier and Guy Verhofstadt in European Parliament on Wednesday, after giving a speech on why no-deal Brexit is the only constructive way forward. Mr. Farage pointed out how none of the EU leaders shook their heads or gave any forms of abuse, but instead just sat there and stared. Speaking on his LBC radio show, Mr. Farage speculated, "The odd thing was that Juncker, Barnier, they're sitting within feet of me, Verhofstadt opposite me, none of them actually shook their heads, none of them gave me any forms of abuse at all. They all just sat there and stared, and that made me think maybe I'm onto something, because look folks, if the guys over here are not prepared to give Mrs. May anything, there is no chance with that backstop unamended, that she's going to get the withdrawal treaty through the House of Commons, so we could, and even though on Tuesday night there was an amendment by Caroline Spe that went through saying the House did not want a no-deal Brexit, it's a funny thing, you know, if public opinion changes then parliamentary numbers change. I think that what's happening is we're looking at these negotiations, we're looking at the total intransigence of the European Commission and the European Union, and I feel we're beginning to move towards a position of saying it's time in these circumstances, if they cannot even be reasonable with us, it's time we walked away." Brexit news. Nigel Farage described their image LBC, "They all just sat there and stared, and that made me think maybe I'm onto something." Nigel Farage comments follow Mr. Farage giving a speech in Wednesday's European Parliament session, in which he declared, "We're beginning to think that the public will come to a view that no deal is better than the backstop, and that's a big problem. It's a big problem for all of you who want to get re-elected in a few weeks' time, because no deal means no £39 billion and your voters will be coughing up the money. No deal means the 100 million bottles of Prosecco we buy every year from Italy will become more expensive, as will 750,000 German cars, so why don't we all prepare sensibly for a no-deal scenario? Why don't we prepare to go to the World Trade Organization, use Article 24, so that we can, after we leave on March 29, have a 2-year period of no tariffs, no quotas, no restrictions of any kind, no problems or difficulties with Ireland whatsoever. Brexit will have been delivered. You'll have protected for at least 2 years your voters. That, I think, ladies and gentlemen, is the only possible and constructive way forward." Senior EU figures, including Mr. Juncker, dismissed the result of Tuesday's Commons vote, which saw MPs back a motion to replace the backstop with alternative arrangements. Mr. Juncker said he hoped a deal is possible, but warned the terms already on offer remain the best and only deal possible. Ireland added its voice to those rejecting the possibility of reopening negotiations on the contentious backstop, branding a last-ditch bid to save Theresa May's Brexit deal as wishful thinking. European Council President Donald Tusk also said in a tweet, "My message to PM at Theresa_May, the EU is clear and consistent. The withdrawal agreement is not open for renegotiation. On Tuesday, we found out what the UK does not want. But we still do not know what the UK does want." Michel Barnier, the European Commission's chief Brexit negotiator, further insisted there is no time to find an alternative to the Irish border backstop, reiterating his position that the EU would not reopen negotiations on Britain's deal. He said the technology does not exist to replace the need for physical checks. Speaking to France's RTL Radio, he said, "We ourselves talked of so-called alternative arrangements which could prevent the return of a hard border, only no one on either side was able to say what arrangement would be needed to ensure controls on goods, animals and merchandise without having a border. We have neither the time nor the technologies."